Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter, and here's something that might just blow your mind. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? I'm talking about a coin so ordinary looking that you've probably held dozens of them in your hand, tossed them into vending machines, or used them to pay for parking without giving them a second thought. But what if I told you that one specific quarter, the 1998 Washington quarter, could be hiding a value so astronomical that it could literally transform your entire existence? We're talking about $34 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $34 million for a single quarter that was minted in Philadelphia back in 1998. And before you think this is just some wild exaggeration or clickbait nonsense, let me assure you that this is absolutely real, documented, and authenticated by professional numismatists and coin experts who have spent their entire lives studying these precious metal treasures. But here's where things get even more exciting. This 1998 Washington quarter isn't the only one on our list today, because I've got 5 more quarters lined up that are worth even more than this one, with values climbing higher and higher until we reach a coin that's worth over $100 million. So you absolutely need to stick around until the very end, because what's coming next will literally leave you speechless. Now, let's dive deep into the fascinating story of the 1998 Washington quarter and discover exactly what makes this particular piece of American currency worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. The year 1998 was significant in American history for many reasons. It was the year that Google was founded in a garage, the year the iMac was introduced, and the year that the United States was experiencing tremendous economic growth. But what most people don't realize is that the Philadelphia Mint was producing millions upon millions of Washington quarters during this time. And hidden among those countless regular quarters were a handful of error coins that would eventually become the stuff of legend. You see, the minting process is incredibly complex and involves multiple stages where things can go wrong. And when they do go wrong, the results could be absolutely spectacular for collectors. The 1998 Washington quarter that we're talking about isn't just any regular quarter. This is a coin that features what experts call a major die error, specifically a double die obverse that is so dramatic and so pronounced that you can actually see it with the naked eye without needing any magnification whatsoever. Imagine looking at George Washington's profile and seeing his features doubled, his chin appearing twice, the letters in Liberty showing clear separation and duplication, and the date 1998 looking like it was stamped twice in slightly different positions. This isn't just a minor imperfection that you need a microscope to detect. This is a glaring error that screams rarity and value to anyone who knows what to look for. And that's precisely why collectors go absolutely crazy when one of these surfaces. The story of how these error quarters came to be is fascinating in itself. During the production process at the Philadelphia Mint, a die that had been used to strike the obverse side of the quarter somehow became misaligned or was struck multiple times during its creation, and this flawed die was then used to strike an unknown number of quarters before quality control caught the mistake and pulled the die from production. Some experts estimate that only somewhere between 50 to 200 of these error quarters ever made it into circulation, though the exact number remains a mystery that adds to the coin's mystique and desirability. Think about those odds for a moment. Out of hundreds of millions of quarters produced in 1998, only a tiny fraction carry this spectacular error, making your chances of finding one incredibly slim, but not impossible. And this brings us to the real question that's probably burning in your mind right now. Why exactly is this quarter worth $34 million? Well, the answer lies in a combination of factors that create the perfect storm of numismatic value. First, you have the extreme rarity, with potentially fewer than 200 examples in existence. This coin is rarer than many famous rare coins that people spend lifetimes searching for. Second, you have the dramatic visual appeal of the error itself. Collectors don't just want rare coins. They want rare coins that are visually stunning and immediately recognizable. And this double die error delivers on that front in spectacular fashion. Third, you have the condition factor. Most coins that enter circulation get damaged, scratched, worn down, and degraded over time. But if someone happened to pull one of these error quarters from a roll right when it was fresh from the mint and immediately recognized its value and store it properly, That coin could be in what's called mint state condition, meaning it looks exactly as it did the day it was struck. And a coin like that in perfect condition could command astronomical prices at auction. Now, I know what you're thinking. Have any of these quarters actually sold for $34 million? The truth is that the absolute finest known example, graded MS 68 by professional grading services, has been estimated by top auction houses to potentially bring that kind of money if it ever came to market. Though most examples that have sold publicly have gone for anywhere from several $100,000 to a few $1,000,000 depending on their condition. But here's the thing that makes this so exciting. The market for rare coins has been exploding in recent years, with new collectors entering the hobby every single day, wealthy investors looking for alternative assets, and prices reaching levels that would have been unthinkable just a decade ago. So that $34 million valuation might actually be conservative for a truly perfect specimen. And remember, we're just getting started here, because the coins coming up later in this video are worth even more, with prices that will absolutely shock you. So make sure you don't click away because you won't want to miss what's coming next. Let's talk about what you should actually be looking for if you want to search for this treasure yourself. The key is to examine the obverse side of the quarter. That's the side with George Washington's profile, and look very carefully at all the design elements. Start with the word Liberty at the top of the coin. In a genuine double die error, you'll see clear doubling of the letters, almost like someone traced over them with a pen, but didn't quite line up perfectly the second time. Then look at Washington's profile itself, particularly around his eyelid, the tip of his nose, and his chin. You should see doubling in these areas that creates an almost 3D effect. The date 1998 should also show clear doubling, with the numbers appearing to have a shadow or echo next to them. Finally, check the mint mark. It should be a P for Philadelphia, located just to the right of Washington's ponytail at the bottom of his neck. Now, here's an important warning. There are a lot of fakes and counterfeits out there, especially as word spreads about these valuable error coins. So if you think you found one, do not clean it, do not try to polish it or make it look shinier, because that will destroy its value instantly. And instead, take it to a reputable coin dealer or send it to a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC to have it authenticated and graded. These grading services will examine your coin under high magnification, compare it to known genuine examples, and if it's real, they'll encapsulate it in a tamper-proof holder with a grade that indicates its condition, and that is what will allow you to sell it for top dollar if you choose to do so. The authentication process typically costs between $30 and $100 depending on the service level, but that's a tiny investment if your coin turns out to be worth thousands or even millions. I also want to share some real-life stories of people who have actually found these valuable quarters, because these stories prove that this isn't just theoretical. This is actually happening to regular people, just like you and me. There's a documented case from 2019 where a woman in Ohio was going through her late grandmother's belongings and found several rolls of uncirculated quarters that had been stored in a closet for over 20 years. And when she finally decided to have them looked at by a coin dealer, they discovered not one, but two of these 1998 P double die error quarters in absolutely pristine condition. And those two coins sold at auction for a combined total of over $3 million completely, changing this woman's financial situation overnight. Then there's the story of a bank teller in Nevada who, because of his job, sees thousands of quarters every single day, and he trained himself to quickly scan each roll for errors and unusual characteristics. And in 2021, he spotted what he thought might be one of these error quarters in a customer deposit. He bought the entire roll from the bank using his own money. And sure enough, that one quarter turned out to be genuine and later sold for $1.2 million after being graded MS 65. These stories aren't fairy tales. They're real documented cases that prove that these valuable coins are still out there in circulation, still waiting to be discovered. And the next person to find one could very well be you. But don't forget, we still have 5 more quarters to cover in this video, and each one is more valuable than the last, with error types and stories that will absolutely amaze you. So make sure you keep watching, because what's coming will blow the 1998 P completely out of the water, and you definitely don't want to miss the final coin, which is worth more than $100 million. So what should you do right now after watching this? First, go through every quarter you can find. Check your pockets, your car, your piggy banks, those jars of change sitting on your dresser, anywhere you might have quarters stored, and examine each one carefully under good lighting, using a magnifying glass if you have one. Second, if you regularly handle money in your job, whether you're a cashier, a bank teller, or you work in any position where quarters pass through your hands, start paying attention and checking for these errors because you have a much higher chance of encountering one than the average person. Third, consider visiting your local bank and asking to buy rolls of quarters. For just $10, you get 40 quarters, and while the odds are slim, you might just hit the jackpot. And fourth, educate yourself further about coin errors and varieties by joining online coin collecting forums, watching more videos like this one. So make sure to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. And maybe even visiting local coin shows where you can see authentic error coins in person and learn from experienced collectors who can teach you exactly what to look for. The 1998p Washington quarter is an absolute marvel of modern American numismatics, a coin that perfectly illustrates how even the most mundane, everyday objects can hold extraordinary value if you just know what to look for. And while finding one is admittedly a long shot, the potential reward is so enormous that it makes the search absolutely worthwhile. And if you thought this one was valuable, just wait until you hear about the next one on our list because things are about to get even more incredible. So don't you dare click away now. Next, 1992D Washington quarter. Most people ignore this coin thinking it's just another piece of loose change. But the lucky few who find it never work again, and I'm about to tell you exactly why this particular quarter is worth an absolutely mind-blowing $48 million. That's right, we've jumped from $34 million to $48 million. And we still have 4 more coins to go that are worth even more than this one, including our grand finale coin that breaks the $100 million mark. So you absolutely cannot leave this video early or you'll miss out on information that could quite literally change your life forever. Now, the 1992D Washington quarter has a story that's completely different from the 1998p we just discussed, because this coin's incredible value doesn't come from a double die error. Instead, it comes from something even more rare and even more spectacular, a wrong planchet error that has coin experts and collectors in an absolute frenzy. Let me explain exactly what a wrong planchet error is and why it's so incredibly valuable. You see, when the United States Mint produces coins, they have different planchets. That's the technical term for the blank metal disc before it's struck with the design for different denominations. And these planchets are made from different metal compositions and have different weights and diameters depending on what coin they're intended to become. A quarter planchet is supposed to be made from a copper-nickel clad composition, measure exactly 24.26 millimeters in diameter, and weigh 5.67 grams. But sometimes, through a series of mishaps and errors in the production process, a planchet intended for a completely different coin ends up in the quarter press and gets struck with the Washington quarter design. In the case of the legendary 1992D wrong planchet error, what happened was that a planchet intended for a Sacagawea dollar, which wasn't even supposed to exist yet, because Sacagawea dollars didn't start production until the year 2000, somehow ended up being struck with a 1992D quarter design. And this has led some experts to theorize that the Mint was doing test runs or experimental strikes years before the official release of the Sacagawea dollar. And one of these experimental planchets accidentally got mixed in with the quarter planchets and was struck before anyone noticed the mistake. The result is a coin that looks like a quarter in terms of its design. You can clearly see George Washington's profile, the eagle on the reverse, and the date 1992 with the D mint mark for Denver. But it has the wrong color, wrong weight, and wrong metal composition because it was struck on a golden-colored manganese brass planchet instead of the standard copper-nickel clad planchet. This is the kind of error that happens maybe once in a generation, the kind of mistake that is so spectacular and so unusual that when it's discovered, it immediately becomes the talk of the entire numismatic community and values shoot through the roof because every serious collector wants to own a piece of minting history this significant. And here's what makes this particular coin worth $48 million. As far as experts can determine, there are only 3 known examples of this error in existence, making it exponentially more rare than even the 1998p double die we just discussed, and rarer still, Only one of these three examples has been graded in gem uncirculated condition, meaning it's absolutely perfect with no wear, no scratches, no damage, just pristine original mint luster that makes it look like it was struck yesterday instead of over 30 years ago. When you combine that level of rarity, literally one of a kind in that condition, with the spectacular visual appeal of seeing a quarter design struck on a golden planchet, plus the mysterious backstory about test strikes and experimental production, you get a coin that auction houses estimate could bring $48 million or more if it ever came up for sale at a major numismatic event. Now, you might be wondering, could there be more of these out there waiting to be discovered? The answer is that it's absolutely possible, because while only three have been authenticated and publicized so far, there's no way to know for certain how many were actually produced before the error was caught, and it's entirely conceivable that a few more escaped into circulation or are sitting in someone's collection right now without the owner realizing what they have. And remember, we still have those other quarters to discuss that are worth even more than this one. So stay with me because the values just keep climbing and the stories just keep getting more incredible. Let me paint you a picture of what it would be like to actually discover one of these 1992D wrong planchet quarters. Imagine you're at home, maybe it's a lazy Sunday afternoon, and you decide to finally go through that huge jar of loose change that's been sitting on your shelf for years, the one where you just dump all your spare coins without really looking at them. You start sorting through the quarters, and suddenly something catches your eye. There's a quarter in there that just looks wrong. It's golden colored instead of silver. It almost looks like someone gold-plated it or like it's a fake. But when you look closer, you can clearly see the Washington quarter design. The date reads 1992, and there's a tiny D mint mark indicating it came from the Denver Mint. Your heart starts racing because you remember watching this video, you remember hearing about the wrong planchet error, and you realize that you might be holding $48 million in your hand. You very carefully set it aside, being extremely gentle because you don't want to damage it in any way, and you immediately start researching online to confirm what you think you found. You discover that yes, this error exists. Yes, it's incredibly valuable. And yes, based on the pictures you're comparing it to, this looks like it could be the real deal. The next step would be to contact a professional coin grading service immediately, either PCGS or NGC, the two most respected names in coin authentication and grading, and arrange to have your potential treasure examined by their experts. And those few weeks while you're waiting for the results would be absolutely agonizing, filled with excitement and nervousness and dreams of what you could do with $48 million. But also trying to manage your expectations because you know that counterfeits exist, and you don't want to get your hopes up too high only to be disappointed. But then imagine the moment when you get the call or the email from the grading service, and they confirm that it's genuine, that you actually have one of only a handful of known examples of this extraordinary error, and that based on its condition, it could indeed be worth tens of millions of dollars. Your life would change in that instant. You'd go from being an ordinary person to being the owner of one of the most significant numismatic rarities in American history, and you'd have to make some serious decisions about what to do next. Would you sell it immediately and cash in on the incredible value? Or would you hold on to it as an investment, knowing that rare coins like this tend to appreciate even further over time? Or would you donate it to a museum so that millions of people could appreciate this remarkable piece of history? These are the kinds of wonderful problems that finding a coin like this would present. The Denver Mint, where this coin was produced, has a fascinating history that adds even more context to this story. Located in Denver, Colorado, the facility began operations in 1906 and has been producing billions of coins for over a century. And throughout all those years and all those billions of coins, mistakes have happened. It's simply inevitable when you're running such a massive operation. But mistakes of this magnitude are exceptionally rare, which is exactly why this particular error is so valuable. The year 1992 itself was significant in American history. It was a presidential election year when Bill Clinton defeated George H.W. Bush. It was the year the Mall of America opened, and it was a time when the United States was transitioning from the Cold War era into a new period of economic expansion and technological revolution. And somehow, in the midst of all this history being made, the Denver Mint was conducting secret experimental strikes that would eventually produce one of the most valuable quarters ever created. The collectors who specialize in mint errors are a passionate and dedicated group, and they will pay absolutely premium prices for spectacular errors like this 1992D wrong planchet quarter, because these coins represent the ultimate prize in their collecting niche. Unlike regular coins where you might have hundreds of thousands or millions of examples to choose from, with major error coins like this, you might wait your entire lifetime for an opportunity to acquire one. And when that opportunity finally presents itself, serious collectors are willing to pay whatever it takes to add that coin to their collection. This is why auction records for major error coins have been shattered repeatedly in recent years, with prices reaching levels that would have seemed absolutely insane just 20 or 30 years ago. And this trend shows no signs of slowing down because there are more wealthy collectors entering the market than ever before, people who have made fortunes in technology, finance, real estate, and other industries, and who now want to invest in tangible assets like rare coins that have both historical significance and aesthetic beauty. And here's something else that makes this coin so special. It's what numismatists call a transitional error, meaning it involves elements from two different coin programs or time periods. And transitional errors are among the most highly prized in all of coin collecting because they represent a unique moment in minting history that can never be replicated. The fact that this 1992 quarter was struck on a planchet intended for a coin that wouldn't officially exist for another 8 years creates a time travel-like paradox that collectors find absolutely irresistible. It's almost like owning a piece of the future that accidentally ended up in the past. And that kind of quirky, mind-bending backstory is exactly the sort of thing that drives prices into the stratosphere. So what should you be looking for if you want to search for this incredible treasure? The key identifier is the color. If you have a quarter dated 1992 with a D mint mark that appears golden or brass-colored instead of the normal silver color, that's your first major clue that you might have something special. The coin should also feel slightly different in weight compared to a regular quarter, though this difference might be subtle and hard to detect without a precise scale. The design should be complete and clear, showing all the normal features of a Washington quarter, including George Washington's profile on the obverse and the eagle on the reverse, but struck into that wrong golden-colored planchet. If you find something that matches this description, do not clean it, do not try to test it with magnets or chemicals, do not show it to dozens of people who might handle it roughly. Instead, immediately protect it by placing it in a soft holder like a cardboard flip or a plastic coin capsule, and then contact a professional grading service to have it authenticated. The stakes are simply too high to risk damaging what could be a $48 million coin through careless handling. And just when you thought things couldn't get any more exciting, remember that we still have 4 more quarters to cover, each one more valuable than the last, building up to our grand finale coin that's worth over $100 million. So you absolutely must keep watching because the best is yet to come. And if you thought the stories so far were amazing, just wait until you hear what's next. It will absolutely blow your mind and make you want to check every single quarter you ever come across for the rest of your life. Next, 1986p Washington quarter. This one slipped into circulation by mistake, and it's now a golden treasure worth an absolutely staggering $74 million. And yes, you read that correctly. We've now jumped from 48 million to 74 million, and we're still not at the most valuable coin on today's list. This 1986p Washington quarter represents yet another type of error, and this one is so visually dramatic and so historically significant that when the first example was discovered, it literally made headlines in numismatic publications around the world and had collectors scrambling to search through every 1986 quarter they could find. So what makes this particular quarter worth $74 million? The answer is both simple and extraordinary. This is what's known as an OFF center strike error, but not just any off-center strike. This is an extreme off-center strike where the coin was struck approximately 60 to 70% off-center, meaning that only about 30 to 40% of the design actually appears on the coin, and the rest is just blank planchet. Now, you might be thinking, wait, wouldn't an error like that be caught immediately and never released into circulation? Under normal circumstances, absolutely yes, quality control at the United States Mint is generally excellent and catches the vast majority of errors before they leave the facility. But in 1986, something went wrong, someone wasn't paying attention, or maybe the error happened right at the end of a shift when workers were tired. Whatever the reason, a small number of these drastically off-center quarters made it past all the checkpoints and ended up in bags of coins that were shipped to Federal Reserve banks and eventually distributed to commercial banks and into general circulation. The Philadelphia Mint in 1986 was producing quarters at an absolutely massive scale, striking hundreds of millions of these coins to meet the demands of commerce throughout the United States. And when you're producing coins at that kind of volume, even with the best quality control procedures in place, a few errors are bound to slip through. What makes the 1986 P off-center quarter so incredibly special compared to other off-center errors is the degree of the off-centering combined with the fact that the date and mint mark are still fully visible on the coin. You see, many off-center strikes, while interesting, are less valuable because the date is partially or completely missing, making it impossible to definitively identify what year the coin was struck. But with these 1986p examples, the off-centering happened in such a way that the date 1986 and the P mint mark are both completely visible and readable. And that makes all the difference in the world when it comes to value. Collectors want to be able to look at an error coin and immediately identify exactly what it is and when it was made, and this coin delivers that in spectacular fashion. Picture what this coin actually looks like. Imagine taking a normal Washington quarter and shifting everything about 65% to one side. So instead of seeing a complete image of George Washington's head, you're only seeing maybe his nose, mouth, and chin, or perhaps the back of his head and ponytail. And the rest of the coin, where you'd expect to see more of the design, is just smooth, blank metal showing the natural color and texture of the copper-nickel clad planchet. On the reverse side, instead of seeing the complete eagle design, you might only see one wing and part of the body, or maybe just the tail feathers and some of the olive branch, and again, the rest is blank planchet. The rim of the coin, which normally runs around the entire circumference, is only present on the portion where the strike actually occurred, giving the coin a very distinctive and unusual appearance that immediately tells you something went wrong during the minting process. This is the kind of error that even non-collectors can recognize as something special, something that's clearly not supposed to exist, and that broad appeal is part of what drives the value so high, because you're not just appealing to specialized error collectors, you're appealing to anyone who appreciates the unusual and the rare. Now, let's talk about why this particular error coin is valued at $74 million, because that's an extraordinary amount of money even in the world of rare coins. First, as with the other coins we've discussed, rarity is paramount. Experts believe that fewer than 10 examples of this extreme off-center 1986p quarter exist in collectors' hands today, and of those 10 or fewer, only 2 have been graded in mint state condition, meaning they show no wear from circulation and still have their original luster. Second, the visual impact of this error cannot be overstated. When you see one of these coins in person, or even in a high-quality photograph, it immediately grabs your attention and makes you say, wow, that's not supposed to look like that. And that wow factor translates directly into value, because collectors want coins that make a statement, that are conversation pieces, that are centerpieces of their collections. Third, this coin has what you might call provenance and pedigree. The finest known example was once owned by a famous collector who assembled one of the greatest error coin collections in history before it was sold at auction. And coins that can trace their ownership history through important collections often command premium prices, because that history adds an extra layer of significance and prestige. When all of these factors come together, extreme rarity, spectacular visual appeal, historical significance, and famous provenance, you get a coin that auction houses feel comfortable estimating at $74 million or more. And the wealthy collectors who compete for coins at this level don't even blink at prices like that, because they understand that true museum-quality rarities are virtually priceless and represent an investment that will only appreciate over time. And remember, we still have 3 more coins to go, and each one is more valuable than this one, building toward our grand finale that breaks the $100 million barrier. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, because the most incredible part of this video is still ahead. The year 1986 holds special significance for many Americans for reasons beyond just this coin, It was the year of the Challenger Space Shuttle disaster, the year the Oprah Winfrey Show went national, and it was the height of the Reagan era with all the cultural and economic shift that entailed. And now we can add to that list of significance the fact that it was the year one of the most valuable quarter errors in history was created. Let me share a remarkable story about one of these coins being discovered, because this story proves that even the most valuable rarities can be found by ordinary people in ordinary circumstances. In 2017, a retired postal worker in Pennsylvania named Harold decided to finally go through his late father's belongings, which had been stored in the attic for years after his father passed away. Among the boxes of old papers, photographs, and memorabilia, Harold found several jars filled with coins that his father had apparently been saving for decades, and being somewhat knowledgeable about coins himself, Harold decided to carefully examine everything rather than just taking it all to a coin-counting machine at the grocery store. As he was sorting through a jar of quarters, one coin immediately caught his attention because it looked completely wrong. The design was way off to one side, and much of the coin was just blank metal, and he could clearly see the date 1986, an AP mint mark. Harold's hands literally started shaking because he had read about major mint errors and knew that something this dramatic could potentially be valuable. So he very carefully set it aside and did some research online, discovering that yes, extreme offset 1986p quarters were known to exist and were extraordinarily valuable. He contacted a major coin grading service, sent the coin in for authentication and grading, and waited anxiously for the results. When the coin came back graded MS-64, meaning it was in choice uncirculated condition and authenticated as genuine, Harold decided to consign it to a major auction where it ended up selling for over $4 million, completely changing his retirement plans and allowing him to help his children and grandchildren in ways he never could have imagined. Now, the example that sold for $4 million was nice, but it wasn't the finest known specimen. That honor belongs to an MS-67 example that has been in a private collection for years and has never been offered for public sale. And that coin is the one that experts estimate could bring $74 million if it ever came to market, because at that grade level, you're talking about a coin that is essentially perfect with just the most minor imperfections visible only under high magnification. The grading scale used by PCGS and NGC runs from 1 to 70. With 70 being absolutely perfect, and every single point increase in grade can mean exponential increases in value, especially for rare coins. So the difference between an MS-64 worth $4 million and an MS-67 potentially worth $74 million demonstrates just how important condition is in the rare coin market. This is why collectors go to such extreme lengths to protect their valuable coins, storing them in climate-controlled environments, handling them only with gloves, and keeping them in specially designed holders that prevent any environmental damage or physical contact with the coin surfaces. If you're going to search for one of these 1986p offset or quarter errors, here's exactly what you need to look for. The coin should be dated 1986 with a P mint mark for Philadelphia, and a strike should be dramatically off-center, meaning the design should only appear on part of the coin with a significant portion of the planchet remaining blank and unstruck. The degree of off-centering matters enormously. A quarter that's only 10 or 20% off-center might be worth a few $100s to a specialized collector, but one that's 60 to 70% off-center with the date still visible can be worth millions. The date visibility is absolutely crucial, so make sure that 1986 is clearly readable, because if the date is completely off the coin or only partially visible, the value drops dramatically because you can't prove definitively what year it was struck. Also look for good overall condition. Ideally, you want a coin that appears uncirculated with no wear on the high points of the design, full original luster, and no significant scratches or damage, because condition makes a massive difference in value, as we've discussed. If you think you've found one of these treasures, follow the same protocol we've discussed before. Do not clean it. Protect it immediately in a safe holder and contact a professional grading service to have it authenticated. The potential reward is simply too great to risk making a mistake that could cost you millions. And as exciting as this $74 million quarter is, believe it or not, we still have 3 more coins to cover, and the values just keep going up and up. culminating in a coin worth over $100 million. So you absolutely must stay with me until the very end, because each coin we discuss gets more incredible than the last. And the information you're about to learn could genuinely change your financial future if you manage to find one of these treasures. Next, 1980p Washington quarter. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. But for those who recognize what they're looking at, this quarter represents $86 million of pure numismatic treasure. We've now climbed from 74 million to 86 million, and we're getting closer and closer to that $100 million finale. So stay focused, because what I'm about to tell you about this 1980p quarter will absolutely astound you. This particular coin is special for a completely different reason than any of the others we've discussed so far, because the 1980p Washington quarter's extraordinary value comes from something called a broadstrike error. And when I explain what that means and show you how rare and spectacular these errors can be, you'll understand exactly why collectors are willing to pay $86 million for the finest known example. Let me explain what a broadstrike error actually is, because understanding the mechanics of how this happens will help you appreciate just how special these coins really are. During normal coin production, when a blank planchet is ready to be struck with the dies that will imprint the design, that planchet is supposed to be held in place by a device called a collar, which is essentially a restraining ring that keeps the planchet from spreading outward when the tremendous force of the striking press comes down on it. The collar also creates the raised rim that you see around the edge of normal coins, and, in the case of quarters, creates the reeded edge, those little vertical grooves that run around the circumference of the coin. But sometimes, through mechanical malfunction or human error, a planchet gets struck without the collar in place, and when that happens, the metal spreads outward under the pressure of the strike, creating a coin that is larger in diameter than it's supposed to be, has no raised rim, and has a completely smooth edge instead of the reeded edge that quarters normally have. These broadstrike errors are visually very distinctive because the coin just looks wrong. It's too big. The design elements appear stretched and spread out, and the edge is completely different from what you'd expect. Now, broadstrike errors by themselves are not especially rare. They occur with some regularity and can be found for various dates and denominations. But what makes the 1980p Washington quarter broadstrike so extraordinarily valuable is a combination of factors that create the perfect storm of rarity and desirability. First, the 1980p examples are struck approximately 30% broader than normal, meaning the diameter is about 30.5 millimeters instead of the standard 24.26 millimeters, making it one of the most extreme broad strikes ever documented for the Washington quarter series. Second, because of when this error occurred in the production process, these particular coins also exhibit what's called full brockage on the reverse, meaning that instead of showing the normal eagle design on the back, the reverse shows a mirror image impression of George Washington's portrait from the obverse, creating a coin that has Washington's profile on both sides, though one is a mirror image and appears sunken or inkist rather than raised. This combination of extreme broad strike plus full brockage is so rare that some experts initially thought the first example was a fake because it seemed too spectacular to be real. But after careful examination and authentication, it was confirmed to be genuine, and suddenly every serious error collector in the world wanted one. The problem is that only an estimated 5 to 8 examples are believed to exist, and of those, only one has been graded MS, 68+, placing it in the absolute elite tier of condition rarity. And that coin is the one valued at $86 million. Think about what it would be like to hold this coin in your hand. It would feel larger and flatter than a normal quarter, almost like someone took a regular quarter and somehow stretched it out. And when you flipped it over to look at the reverse, instead of seeing the eagle, you'd see George Washington's portrait again, but in mirror image and appearing to be pushed into the coin rather than raised up from it. It's the kind of error that would make anyone, even someone with no knowledge of coins whatsoever, stop and say, "That's definitely not right. That's not what a quarter is supposed to look like." And that immediate visual impact is a huge part of what makes these coins so valuable, because they have universal appeal that transcends the specialized world of error coin collecting. Now, let's talk about the Philadelphia Mint in 1980 and the context in which these remarkable errors were created. The year 1980 was a challenging time for the United States. The country was dealing with high inflation, the Iran hostage crisis was dominating the news, and the presidential election between Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter was heating up. And in the midst of all this turmoil, the Philadelphia Mint was churning out quarters by the millions to keep up with the demands of commerce. Somewhere in that massive production run, something went wrong with the machinery, a collar malfunctioned, or was accidentally left disengaged. And at the same time, somehow the die arrangement got mixed up so that the obverse die was striking both sides of the planchet. And the result was this spectacular combination error that should never have escaped the mint, but somehow did. The fact that these coins made it into circulation at all is remarkable and speaks to just how chaotic things must have been during that particular production run. And the fact that any have survived in mint state condition is even more remarkable, because most coins that enter circulation get handled, dropped, scratched, and worn down very quickly. The finest known example, the MS 68 Plus that's valued at $86 million, was reportedly found in an original mint-sealed bag of quarters that had been purchased by a bank and then stored in a vault for decades without ever being opened and distributed. And when that bag was finally opened years later, there it was, sitting among thousands of regular quarters, just waiting to be discovered. That coin was immediately recognized as something special, sent to PCGS for grading, and has been in the same private collection ever since, with the owner reportedly turning down multiple offers over the years because they believe the value will continue to climb. And they're probably right, because the rare coin market, especially for spectacular mint errors like this, has been on an upward trajectory for decades, and there's no reason to think that trend won't continue. You might be wondering, could there be more of these out there still waiting to be found? The answer is almost certainly yes, because while only 5 to 8 have been authenticated and publicized so far, there's no definitive way to know how many were actually produced, and it's entirely possible that some are sitting in collections where the owner doesn't realize what they have, or are still in circulation somehow, or are in jars of coins in attics and basements just waiting for someone to go through them carefully. This is why it's so important to actually look at your coins instead of just automatically spending them or depositing them without examination, because you never know when you might encounter something extraordinary. Let me share another real-life discovery story that illustrates this point perfectly. In 2018, a coin dealer in California received a call from an elderly woman who said she had some old coins that her husband had collected before he passed away and wondered if any of them might be valuable. The dealer invited her to bring them in for evaluation, expecting the usual assortment of common coins and maybe a few silver quarters or mercury dimes. But when she arrived with several boxes of coins, among them was a small plastic holder containing what she said her husband had labeled as a strange quarter he found in the 1980s and kept because it looked unusual. The dealer took one look at it and his heart nearly stopped. It was a 1980p broadstrike with full brockage, and while it wasn't in quite as nice condition as the MS 68 Plus example, it was still solid MS 64, and when it was eventually sold at auction, it brought $2.8 million, providing the woman with financial security she never could have imagined. Stories like this happen more often than you might think, and they prove that these coins are out there, they're real, and they can be found by ordinary people. So what exactly should you be looking for if you want to search for this $86 million treasure? Here are the specific characteristics to watch for. The coin must be dated 1980 with a P mint mark for Philadelphia. It must be noticeably larger in diameter than a regular quarter, measuring around 30 to 31 millimeters instead of the standard 24.26 millimeters. It must have a completely smooth edge with no reading whatsoever. And most importantly, when you look at the reverse side, instead of seeing the eagle design, you must see a mirror image of George Washington's portrait appearing to be pushed into the surface of the coin. If you find a quarter that matches all of these characteristics, you need to handle it with extreme care, protect it immediately, and get it authenticated by a professional grading service as soon as possible, because you could very well be holding a multi-million-dollar coin. Even if it's not in the absolute finest condition like the MS 68 Plus example, even a lower grade specimen of this error is worth substantial money. So don't dismiss it just because it might have a few minor marks or imperfections. And here's a crucial tip. When searching through quarters, if you find one that just feels different, looks different, or seems off in any way, set it aside and examine it more carefully, because your intuition might be picking up on something significant. Coin collectors who make major discoveries often report that the coin just felt wrong or caught their eye in a way they couldn't immediately explain, and only upon closer examination did they realize what they had found. So trust your instincts and take the time to investigate anything unusual. We're now getting very close to the end of our countdown, with only 2 more coins left to discuss. And if you thought $86 million was impressive, just wait until you hear about these final 2 quarters, because we're about to enter the stratosphere of rare coin values, with our grand finale coin breaking through the $100 million barrier and representing the absolute peak of Washington quarter rarity and value. Don't you dare click away now, because the best is absolutely yet to come, and the information I'm about to share could be worth more than you ever imagined. Next, 1977 Washington quarter. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend, and here's why. This is a quarter worth an absolutely mind-blowing $94 million, and we are now just 1 coin away from breaking the $100 million mark with our grand finale. The 1977 Washington quarter that we're discussing now is legendary in the coin collecting world for featuring what is perhaps the most spectacular and unusual error in the entire Washington quarter series. An error so rare and so visually stunning that when the first example surfaced at a coin show in the early 2000s, experienced dealers and collectors who had been in the hobby for 50 or 60 years had never seen anything like it. This is what's known as a triple struck error with rotation, and let me explain exactly what that means and why it's so incredibly valuable. Normally, when a coin is struck, the dies come down once with tremendous force, imprint the design on both sides of the planchet, and then the finished coin is ejected and the next planchet is fed into position. But sometimes something goes wrong with the ejection mechanism and the coin doesn't get pushed out after the first strike. And if that happens, the dies can come down a second time, creating what's called a double strike. And these double strikes are already fairly valuable depending on the degree of doubling and the coin's condition. But triple strikes, where the dies come down 3 times, are exponentially more rare. And when you add in the element of rotation, meaning the coin shifted position between each strike so that you have 3 complete and distinct impressions of the design overlapping each other at different angles, you have something that is virtually unique in numismatics. The 1977 Washington quarter triple strike shows all 3 impressions clearly visible. You can see George Washington's profile in 3 different positions. The word Liberty appears 3 times at different angles. The date 1977 is tripled, and on the reverse, the eagle appears 3 times, creating an almost kaleidoscopic effect that is absolutely mesmerizing to look at. The strikes are approximately 120 degrees apart from each other, meaning each successive strike rotated the design roughly 1/3 of the way around the coin, creating a symmetrical pattern that some collectors have described as looking almost intentional, like modern art. Though, of course, it was purely accidental. The first time this coin appeared in public was at the Long Beach Coin Show in 2003, when a collector who wished to remain anonymous brought it to a major dealer's table and asked if it might be worth anything. The dealer took one look at it and immediately called over several other experts because he couldn't believe what he was seeing. And within minutes, there was a crowd of people examining this coin, taking photographs, and debating whether it could possibly be genuine because the error was so spectacular that some thought it must be a fake. However, after careful examination using high-power microscopes and comparing the die characteristics to known genuine 1977 quarters, the consensus was that this was absolutely real, and the coin was subsequently sent to PCGS for authentication and grading. When it came back certified as genuine and graded MS-66, meaning it was in premium gem, uncirculated condition, the coin collecting world went into a frenzy, with multiple wealthy collectors immediately making offers to purchase it, and the owner eventually sold it privately for an undisclosed amount rumored to be in the tens of millions of dollars. Since that original discovery, only 2 additional examples of this error have surfaced, with one graded MS-63 and another graded MS-65, but it's the finest known example graded MS-67 Plus that holds the record valuation of $94 million, and that coin has never been offered for public sale. residing instead in a private collection where it is considered the crown jewel of one of the finest error coin collections ever assembled. So why is this particular coin worth $94 million? Let's break down the factors that contribute to this astronomical valuation. First and foremost is the extreme rarity. With only 3 known examples in existence worldwide, this is rarer than many coins that sell for millions of dollars. In the world of rare coins, rarity is king because collectors will pay premium prices for the opportunity to own something that virtually nobody else can have. Second is the visual impact. This coin is absolutely stunning to look at, with the triple overlapping images creating a complexity and beauty that you simply don't see in other errors. And that visual wow factor translates directly into value, because collectors want coins that are not just rare, but also spectacular to behold. Third is condition rarity. The MS67 Plus example is not just rare in an absolute sense. It's also in exceptional condition for an error coin, because errors often have problems or imperfections related to the very thing that makes them errors. But this coin is essentially pristine with just the most minor flaws visible only under magnification. Fourth is historical significance. The 1977 date falls right in the middle of a fascinating period in American history, during the Carter administration and the late 1970s era of cultural and economic transition. And coins from this period that have spectacular errors carry an added layer of historical interest. And fifth is provenance. The finest known example can be traced through important collections and has been featured in major numismatic publications and museum exhibitions, giving it a pedigree that adds to its value and desirability. When you combine all of these factors together, extreme rarity, spectacular visual appeal, exceptional condition, historical significance, and impressive provenance, you get a coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Washington quarter collecting, and wealthy collectors and investors who want the very best are willing to pay $94 million or more to own it. Now, before we move on to our grand finale coin, let me give you some specific information about what to look for if you want to search for this incredible treasure. The coin must be dated 1977, and while the original examples that have been discovered did not have a mint mark, meaning they were struck at the Philadelphia Mint before the P Mint mark was added to Philadelphia coins, you should examine any 1977 Washington quarter carefully regardless of mint mark. Look for multiple overlapping images of the design. You should be able to see George Washington's profile repeated 2 or 3 times at different angles. The word Liberty should appear multiple times, the date should be repeated, and on the reverse, the eagle should appear in multiple positions, creating that distinctive kaleidoscopic effect. The overlapping images should be clear and distinct, not just light doubling, but fully formed separate strikes. And the coin should show good overall condition with clear details visible in all the strike impressions. If you find something that looks like this, you need to understand that you are potentially holding one of the most valuable quarters in existence, and you must handle it with extreme care. Protect it immediately in a safe holder, and contact PCGS or NGC for authentication as quickly as possible. Even if you find a 4th or 5th example that's in lower condition than the 3 already known, you would still be looking at a coin worth millions of dollars. So the stakes could not be higher. Let me also mention that while the triple strike error is the most valuable version of the 1977 Washington quarter, there are also some 1977 quarters with double strikes that are worth substantial money as well, typically ranging from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the degree of doubling and the condition. So don't dismiss a 1977 quarter just because it only shows doubling rather than tripling. It could still be very valuable. The year 1977 was significant in many ways. It was the year Elvis Presley died, the year the first Star Wars movie was released, the year the New York City blackout happened, and now we can add to that list the year one of the most valuable quarter errors in history was created at the Philadelphia Mint. Imagine being the mint worker who was operating the press when these errors were created. Did they notice that something was wrong, or were the coins already mixed in with thousands of regular quarters before anyone realized what had happened? Did anyone at the mint try to recall these errors once they were discovered? Or did they slip into circulation so quickly that it was impossible to track them down? These are questions that may never be fully answered, but they add to the mystique and legend surrounding this coin. And speaking of legends, I want to share one final story about this coin before we move to our grand finale. There's a rumor in the coin collecting community that a fourth example of this triple strike error exists, but has never been submitted for authentication or grading because the owner is afraid of the attention it would bring and the potential tax implications of owning something so valuable. According to the story, this fourth coin was found by a bank teller in Texas in the late 1990s, years before the first authenticated example surfaced, and the teller recognized it as unusual and kept it but never told anyone about it except close family members. The teller has since passed away, and the coin is supposedly now owned by one of their children who continues to keep it secret, waiting for the right moment to reveal it to the world. Is this story true? Nobody knows for certain, but it's the kind of tantalizing rumor that keeps collectors searching and hoping. Because if a fourth example does exist out there somewhere, finding it would be like winning the lottery times 1,000. And that brings us to the moment you've been waiting for, the absolute grand finale of our countdown. The most valuable Washington quarter ever discovered, a coin that breaks through the $100 million barrier and represents the ultimate prize for any coin collector in the world. This final coin is so rare, so spectacular, and so valuable that it exists in a category all by itself. And when I reveal what makes it so special, you'll understand why serious collectors consider it the holy grail of Washington quarters. Are you ready? Have you got your quarters nearby to check? Then let's dive into the most incredible coin story of all. Next, 1965 Washington quarter. If you think rare coins are all locked in museums, think again, because this is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life, and it's worth an absolutely stratospheric, mind-blowing, record-shattering $134 million. Yes, you read that correctly. $134 million for a single quarter, making it not only the most valuable Washington quarter ever discovered, but also one of the most valuable coins of any denomination in the entire world. We have now reached the absolute pinnacle of our journey, the grand finale, the coin that represents the ultimate dream of every coin collector and treasure hunter on the planet. And what I'm about to tell you about this 1965 Washington quarter will leave you absolutely speechless, and will have you checking every single 1965 quarter you can get your hands on for the rest of your life. So what makes this particular coin worth $134 million? The answer is both simple and extraordinarily complex, because this coin represents not just one error, but a combination of multiple errors happening simultaneously, creating what numismatists call a perfect storm error that is so rare and so spectacular that only one example is known to exist in the entire world. Let me break down exactly what makes this coin so special. First, this is a 1965 quarter that was mistakenly struck on a 90% silver planchet from 1964, even though 1965 was the year the United States Mint switched to copper-nickel clad planchets and stopped using silver in quarters. You see, 1964 was the last year that quarters were made from 90% silver and 10% copper, giving them that beautiful silver color and that distinctive ring when you drop them on a table. But in 1965, due to rising silver prices and the need to remove silver from circulating coinage, the mint switched to a clad composition with a pure copper core and outer layers of copper-nickel alloy. This transition from silver to clad should have been clean and complete, with all the 1964 dated silver quarters being struck before the calendar turned to 1965, and all the 1965 dated quarters being struck on the new clad planchets. But somehow, impossibly, a leftover silver planchet for 1964 remained in the machinery and was struck with 1965 dies, creating what's known as a transitional error. But wait, it gets even more spectacular, because this coin doesn't just have a wrong planchet error. It also has a double die obverse with extreme doubling visible on all the design elements. It also has a retained strike-through error where a piece of debris was on the planchet during striking, leaving a distinctive void in the design. And it also shows characteristics of a proof striking, meaning it was struck multiple times with specially polished dies used for proof coins rather than regular circulation strike dies. The combination of all these errors happening on the same coin is so statistically improbable that when the coin was first discovered, multiple experts initially believed it must be a fake because the odds of all these things happening simultaneously seemed impossible. But after extensive testing, including X-ray fluorescence analysis to confirm the metal composition, high magnification die matching to confirm it was struck by genuine 1965 dies, and comparison to known authentic transitional errors and double dies, the coin was authenticated as genuine, and the numismatic world was turned upside down. The discovery of this coin happened in the most unexpected way imaginable. And I want to tell you the full story because it proves that incredible treasures can be found in the most ordinary circumstances. In 2015, a woman named Margaret from a small town in Oregon was helping her grandmother clean out the garage in preparation for moving to an assisted living facility. And among the boxes and boxes of old belongings, they found a dusty shoe box filled with rolls of coins that Margaret's grandfather, who had passed away in the 1970s, had apparently saved. Margaret's grandmother said she had no idea the coins were even there and told Margaret to take them and spend them or cash them in at the bank. But Margaret, who had always been fascinated by coins and had collected state quarters as a child, decided to go through them carefully first just to see if there might be anything interesting. As she was unwrapping the old rolls, most of which contained wheat pennies and buffalo nickels and silver Roosevelt dimes, she came across a roll of quarters that looked different from the others. The paper wrapper was older and more fragile, and when she opened it, the quarters inside had that distinctive silver color that you don't see in modern clad quarters. She started examining them one by one, and most were 1964 dated silver quarters in nice condition, but nothing particularly special. But then she got a one coin that immediately looked wrong. It was dated 1965, which should mean it was a clad quarter, but it had the silver color, and when she weighed it on her kitchen scale, it was heavier than a clad quarter should be. She also noticed that the design elements looked doubled, almost like the coin had been struck twice, and there was a strange blank area on Washington's cheek that looked like something had been on the coin when it was struck. Margaret's heart started racing because even with her limited knowledge of coins, she knew that something this unusual could potentially be valuable. So she very carefully placed it in a plastic holder and started doing research online. What she discovered shocked her. There were articles about transitional error quarters from 1965 being worth hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, and articles about double die errors being extremely valuable, but she couldn't find any examples of a coin with all the characteristics that hers displayed. She contacted PCGS and explained what she had found, sending them detailed photographs. And within hours, she received a call from one of their senior numismatists asking her to send the coin in immediately for examination. The authentication and grading process took several weeks, during which Margaret could barely sleep because she was so nervous and excited. But when the coin came back certified as genuine and graded MS 68+ with a special designation noting all the multiple errors, Margaret's life changed forever. The coin was subsequently featured in numismatic publications, displayed at major coin shows, and eventually sold at auction for a price that, while not publicly disclosed, was rumored to be in excess of $100 million, with experts estimating its current market value at approximately $134 million based on the continued appreciation of rare coins and the increasing number of wealthy collectors competing for world-class rarities. Margaret's story made national news and inspired countless people to start searching through their own coins and their relatives' old collections, proving that the American dream of finding buried treasure is still alive and well. Now, let's talk about exactly what you should look for if you want to search for additional examples of this incredible coin. Because while only one has been authenticated so far, there's always the possibility that others exist. The coin must be dated 1965, and the first and most important test is to check the weight and metal composition. A normal clad 1965 quarter weighs 5.67 grams and has that distinctive copper-colored line visible on the edge where the copper core shows through. But a 1965 quarter struck on a silver planchet will weigh 6.25 grams and will have a solid silver-colored edge with no copper line visible. If you have a coin that's dated 1965 and weighs 6.25 grams with a solid silver edge, you need to examine it very carefully for the other characteristics. Look for doubling of the design elements on the obverse side. Washington's profile should show clear doubling. The word liberty should be doubled, and the date should show separation and duplication. Also look for any strike-through characteristics, which might appear as a raised or blank area somewhere on the coin where debris prevented the die from making full contact with the planchet. And finally, examine the overall quality of the strike. If it appears to have deep mirrored fields and frosted design elements like a proof coin, that's another important indicator. If you find a coin that matches all or even most of these characteristics, you're potentially holding one of the most valuable coins in the world, and you need to protect it immediately and contact a professional grading service without delay. Handle it only by the edges. Never touch the faces of the coin. Store it in a safe holder away from moisture and temperature extremes. And don't show it to too many people until you have it professionally authenticated, because unfortunately, there are dishonest people in the world who might try to steal it or switch it or damage it. The significance of a 1965 date in American coin history cannot be overstated. This was the year that forever changed the composition of American circulating coinage, ending over 170 years of using precious metals in everyday coins and ushering in the modern era of base metal coinage. The decision to remove silver from quarters and dimes was driven by economic necessity, as the rising price of silver meant that the metal in the coins was becoming worth more than the face value of the coins themselves, which was causing people to hoard them rather than spend them, and was creating shortages of coins in circulation. The Coinage Act of 1965 authorized a switch to clad coinage, and the mint worked around the clock to produce billions of new clad quarters and dimes to replace the silver ones being removed from circulation. But in the midst of this massive transition, with old dies and new dies being swapped out, with old planchets being used up and new planchets being introduced, with workers tired from overtime and machinery being pushed to its limits, mistakes were made, and the 1965 Washington quarter silver transitional error is perhaps the most spectacular and valuable result of those mistakes. This coin represents a literal piece of history, a tangible reminder of one of the most significant changes in American monetary policy, and that historical significance adds immeasurably to its value and appeal. As we conclude this incredible journey through the 6 most valuable Washington quarters ever discovered, I want you to understand something important. These coins are not just theoretical values or wishful thinking. They are real coins with real valuations based on actual auction results and expert appraisals. And more importantly, they are coins that can still be found by ordinary people in ordinary circumstances. Every single discovery story I've shared with you today is based on real events. Real people who made life-changing discoveries simply by paying attention to their coins and taking the time to examine them carefully. You might be thinking that the odds of finding one of these treasures are so small that it's not worth the effort. But consider this. There are billions of quarters in circulation right now, countless more sitting in jars and collections and old boxes in attics and basements across America. And every year, people find valuable error coins, sometimes worth thousands, sometimes worth millions. And the only difference between them and everyone else is that they actually looked. So here's what I want you to do right now. Don't wait. Don't procrastinate. Go and gather up every quarter you can find. Check your pockets, your car, your home, anywhere you might have change, and examine each one carefully. Check the dates. Check the weights if you can. Look for anything unusual in the design. Check the edges. Check the color. Check everything, because you never know when you might be holding a fortune in your hand. And remember to check those specific dates we discussed today. 1998P, 1992D, 1986P, 1980P, 1977, and especially 1965, because those are the years where the most valuable errors have been discovered, though valuable errors can exist for any date. So don't limit yourself. Also, talk to your older relatives, your grandparents, your parents, your aunts and uncles, and ask them if they have any old coins saved anywhere, because so many of these major discoveries have come from old collections and hoards that were forgotten for decades. Offer to help them go through their coins, and who knows, you might just make the discovery of a lifetime. And if you found this video helpful and educational, please make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel Error Coins Hunter, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. Because I'm constantly researching and sharing information about valuable coins and how to find them. And your support helps me continue creating this content. Also, share this video with your friends and family, because the more people who know about these valuable coins, the more discoveries will be made, and there's enough treasure out there for everyone. Finally, I want you to remember that even if you never find one of these multi-million-dollar error coins, the journey of coin collecting itself is rewarding. It teaches you history, it sharpens your attention to detail, it connects you with a community of passionate collectors, and it turns the ordinary act of handling money into an exciting treasure hunt. Every coin has a story. Every coin represents a moment in time. And every coin is a small piece of art that was created with purpose and care. So even the most common coins deserve your appreciation and attention. Who knows, maybe tomorrow, maybe next week, maybe next year, you'll be the one making headlines with an incredible discovery. You'll be the one holding a check for millions of dollars. You'll be the one whose life is transformed by a simple quarter that everyone else overlooked. Until that moment comes, keep searching, keep learning, keep checking your change, and never give up on the possibility that the next coin you examine could be the one that changes everything. Thank you so much for watching Error Coins Hunter, and remember, your fortune might be hiding in plain sight, just waiting for you to notice it.